State drives strategy. Most high performers have been trained to push through to treat discomfort as a sign to keep going. But Sam Adams knows what it costs when that becomes the only mode available. A high performance coach, a certified breathwork facilitator, living with brain tumour, Sam has built her entire practice around one of the most overlooked performance tools there is, the breath. I'm Ildiko Seely, your routine and performance strategist. And on Routine is Revenue, we look at how your health habits translate directly into business performance. Stress regulation sits in the mental health pillar of the Temple method, and today we get into the most immediate tool you have for it. The one you are already doing, just not consciously. So Sam, you had a brain tumor, and a lot of people in that situation or similar situations who come out the other side talk about gratitude and perspective. Now you came out and built a practice about breathing. Why breathing? Why do you think most people have absolutely no idea why breath is actually doing, or what breath is doing to their performance right now?
Well, that's a two-part question, really. Well, I still have a brain tumor. It's something that I live with, and I think I had already discovered breath work when I found out about my brain tumor, and I wasn't probably utilizing it in the best way before the brain tumor. I needed something to help me regulate, to stay calm, to be less anxious, manage my emotions and my looping thoughts and things. And breathwork really just turned into the thing that really helped me do that. I found breathwork in a really tricky point in my life, when my marriage broke down and my dad passed away, and my dog died all in a short space of time, and that was in 2020.
Gosh.
But then in 2022, I had been using breathwork and a little bit with clients, but I think 2022 really just made me lean into the practice a whole lot more and make me fully appreciate how powerful it was. And I started to unpick my own nervous system, what was happening to me, and then obviously just through my own self-discoveries and then starting to use it more and more with my clients, I realized how impactful it was to not only optimize myself and my performance, but actually that this could really benefit the performance of my clients. And most people don't realize this because breath is automatic. It's not something we have to consciously think about. We don't have to think, oh, now I need to inhale, now I need to exhale. It just runs in the background and we don't pay any attention.
It's something that I've heard from people over time, like, doing breathwork, but I'm breathing anyway, so what do I need to do? And people sort of, don't give it any thought or don't necessarily understand why they need to pay attention to it.
I was exactly the same. When someone said to me in 2020, like I said, when I was having a really tricky time in my life, go to breathwork, I was very skeptical. I was like, well, I'm breathing. What is breathwork? And, it's like, I don't want my breathing to be hard work. But anyway, I was and I meet a lot of skeptical people. And I was one of those people. So I can really relate to them and how they're feeling. But it's the one system in our body that we have conscious control over, as well as it being automatic. And when we take conscious control over it, we can really impact our state, that our state of our nervous system, which state drives strategy. Your state, your internal state of your nervous system and where it's operating from impacts everything you do, your emotions, your thinking, your behavior. So with all the best laid plans and all the best laid strategies in the world, if your nervous system is dysregulated, you're never going to optimize your capacity or your performance. And the breath is the direct line communication to your nervous system.
Absolutely. This completely underlines my approach to have good health routines, but in every area of our health. Because if we don't, then we can't connect to our leadership to the maximum, can we? We can't deliver what we want to deliver when we don't look after ourselves properly on every level.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, for me, become the most crucial level because, your nervous system is like your conductor. It
Mm-hmm.
orchestrates everything. It's the CEO of you. It
Really?
drives everything. And if you don't upgrade it, you pay it no attention, then you're trying to run a modern life and modern leadership on an old system that comes from the year 2000. Because most people haven't felt, no, most people don't understand it, and they don't understand how it impacts performance and
Mm-hmm.
thinking and behavior.
So, what's actually happening to the nervous system in a stress response? And what does breathing have to do with interrupting that cycle before it compounds?
Your nervous system is, like I say, it controls everything. And the reason that I talk about these two things together, breathwork and nervous system, and it impacts my work with leaders and performers, is just like I said, just briefly. The direct line communication to your nervous system is your breath. That if you can change your breath and engage and manipulate your breath in certain ways, you can change the messages and the signaling coming from your nervous
Mm.
system to your brain. Now, we are bottom down, not top down. Most of us think cognitively, especially high performers and leaders who I deal with a lot. They're all in their heads. It's all about the thinking. But 80% of communication comes from the body to the brain, and the brain will try and interpret those signals that your nervous system is sending to you. And if you want to have clearer signals to your brain and therefore manage your thinking, your actions, your behaviors, your decisions, um, then you need to make sure the signaling coming from your body to your brain is clearer. And the breath is the one tool that will help you manage your state and change your state. And there's different states. Obviously, I mean, without getting into it too deeply, there's also different nervous system pathways as well. Um, it is, yeah, it's we can do a bit of surface level. We can't go too deep, but
Yeah,
most people understand sympathetic, or they might have heard of sympathetic and parasympathetic. These are
yeah,
two branches of the nervous system. Sympathetic just means like the accelerator pedal in a car,
okay,
and parasympathetic means the brake pedal.
right.
Some people call the sympathetic like activation, arousal, drive, fight or flight. And parasympathetic is more that ease, that calm, that downshift, the brake pedal. And that's two ways to look at it. And using your breath, you can help engage one more than the other, or bring them more back into balance.
That's really
Makes sense?
interesting. The little bit of experience this analogy has brought up in my memory was actually quite recent. So one evening at home, sitting on the sofa after dinner, doing my cross stitch, seemingly rested and calm, but I had something on the television and there was some action happening. And of course, I'd be looking up and watching the program. And suddenly I realized that I had palpitations and I was breathing fast
Ah, right.
because of the
Yeah.
action, because I was nervous for obviously the lead character in that scene was being attacked. And I was nervous because I
Mm.
wanted him to come out okay. And even though I wasn't paying a huge amount of attention, my body, my senses were taking in the information, and my body responded really quite actively
Yeah.
by having the palpitations and the shallow breathing. And I thought, hang on a minute, I'm just watching television. Absolutely nothing is happening to me. I'm sitting here doing my cross stitch. So being, practicing breath work every single day, it then gave me that sort of equipment to instantly just take a few deep breaths and bring myself back to normal and disconnect from the action on the
Yeah.
television, from my real life.
Exactly, because your nervous system doesn't, it can't distinguish what's real and what's not real.
Mm.
To them, it's a threat, right? The body has a physical reaction. I teach people to, in business, to get in their bodies. Like, it's something I never thought I would say, but we have to get in the body first, because the activation starts there first. If you've started thinking about it, you're already too late. The body's activated. So we have to learn to understand signs of what's happening, how our body reacts through heat, through faster breathing, racing heart, all these certain things that can happen in your body. And if you can notice them like you did, you can interrupt it, and you can say, hang on a minute, is this a threat? Is this a real actual threat? Or is it just that my body thinks it's a threat? And then you can take control of that, and you can regulate yourself. What you did was beautiful. You regulated yourself in that moment. You took control of your breath, and you sent a message to your brain, because then you can think clearer once you take control of that and say, hey, effectively telling your nervous system, this is not an actual threat.
Yeah.
And it can calm down, it can stand down. Then your breath lowers, your heart rate lowers, your blood pressure lowers, and then you
Back
create
to
more
normal.
parasympathetic. Yeah, you create more parasympathetic tone in your body, which allows everything to downshift.
And this is exactly why these little micro actions, just recognizing it and doing something against it.
No, but it helps with the
Exa-
practice of regulation, but
Yeah.
also, that's like it's a trainable skill, a lot of this work. So those little moments like the one you had, the more you can notice those moments, then the more you can make adjustments, and you'll end up in more regulation than not. You create flexibility in your nervous system, which is really powerful for when the situations are greater and you
Yeah.
do have actual threat, or you do have a serious situation with, maybe you're having an argument with someone or a difficult conversation, or, or there's high pressure at work and high tension. You will manage those situations much more better because you've learned balance and regulation in other situations, and you're teaching your nervous system what is an actual threat and what is not a threat. And it learns these behaviors and it becomes familiar, and then it becomes predictable.
Do you have an arsenal of micro actions you can teach your clients, or how do you teach someone who is forever on the go, or like they are always on, to stop and to take those little micro actions and micro breaks?
Yeah, I mean, that we live in a society, I feel more and more and more and more of my clients are constantly on. And I think, we live, high functioning humans, high performers, entrepreneurs, they used to be on all the time,
Yeah.
right? Busy people, but also society has created that in that world where we are always available because we have all of this ways of access. The phone obviously is the biggest one. We get our emails there, we get our WhatsApps, we get everything. So we're always available. So your nervous system, if you're someone that functions at this high level of always on, always available, then your nervous system has a higher baseline, and it can be incredibly damaging long term because your off switch effectively starts to malfunction. So anytime that you start to try and down regulate, have a bit of stillness, have a bit of boredom, have a bit of actually let's put the laptop down and the phone down, it doesn't like it. It sees it as a threat because it's not the normal pattern of behavior. So you have to start to titrate. You have to start to bring in small pockets of micro regulation. It's a neuroscience term, where you start to bring in tiny, tiny pockets during your day of when you just regulate yourself, or you just notice your breath, or you just take a couple of breaths. And one of the ones that I do consistently for myself, because I'm quite activated, I'm quite an on person. I need this work myself
Yes,
for me.
absolutely.
Yeah, is when I switch between tasks. So like I'll come off of this call, and before I go on to my next call, I'll literally spend 1 or 2 minutes and I'll micro regulate myself. And I might just sit here and get my breathing into a nice even rhythm, because the reason I do that is because my nervous system loves rhythm. Your nervous system loves rhythm. When the lungs get in a nice rhythm, the heart and the brain and the metabolism all align. It's a beautiful way to reset. You just breathe in for 5, out for 5. But there's many ways that you can micro regulate through the day. When you walk through a doorway, make sure you just become aware of your breath and take one conscious breath. It will slow your breath down. It will just switch gears. It's so simple, some of micro
Honestly, I
regulation.
can
It's unbelievable.
totally vouch for that. It's something I obviously came across something that I was listening to about eating.
Mm.
That when we sit down and start to eat really quickly, then it's got a detrimental effect on our body. So take a
Hmm.
moment and take a deep breath before you take your first mouthful, to then tell your body that, okay, it's time to relax now and everything is absolutely fine. Just the teaching was just one breath. So what we pay
Yeah.
attention to with my husband now is when we sit down, because I'm terrible. You put the plate of food in front of me and I start eating.
Yeah.
So I had to train myself, wait for both of us to sit and then raise our glasses, or even if it's a cup of tea, doesn't matter what it is. And we look at each other and say cheers and take a deep breath, take a sip. And that kind of
So
settles like, okay,
important.
cooking is done, the stress of the day is done, we can actually calm down now and eat our dinner. And it's just a tiny, tiny little micro action that we introduced a few weeks back. And It's brilliant because then we connect with our food as well as each other.
Yeah, and when we're activated, so we have more sympathetic tone or arousal in our body. The body diverts resources,
Mm.
because sympathetic tone and arousal means a threat, whether high level or low level. So resources are diverted. And one of the things that shuts down is your digestive system,
Mm.
which is why we call parasympathetic rest and digest. So when you're busy rushing around and you just sit down, start eating your food, you probably have more sympathetic tone. So your digestive system doesn't work is efficiently because resources have been diverted away from it. So there is a real strong connection about eating and using breath work before you eat, because you create more parasympathetic tone. You allow everything to downshift and sympathetic tone comes down. And your body then becomes, okay, resources are now needed to digest my food. So if you want to digest your food properly, and have less gut health issues, doing breath work before you eat is absolutely
The
a
right
game
thing to
changer. You
do.
need to do it.
Yeah.
So you're doing something that is
But
absolutely bang on.
I tell you what, on the flip side of it, a lot of people, and I used to do this when I was in employment, and
Mm,
occasionally I do this at home now when I'm self-employed because life just gets in the way, or business gets in the way of life. And I take
mm,
my food to my desk thinking, oh, I just do something
mm,
easy and eat at my desk. But then over a number of weeks, because I was developing something new, so it's like, oh, I don't have time to actually have a break. So I would take my breakfast and then lunch, and it's like days go past and more meals end up at my
mm.
being eaten at my desk. It's like, no, this is not right. But you explaining this, that the digestive system kind of almost shuts down when resources are
Yeah,
reglooped
needed
somewhere else,
elsewhere.
then literally alarm bells are going off like, I need to stop this big time
Yeah,
and manage
100%. And
manage myself considerably better on that front.
yeah, I've come across many high performers who have gut and digestive issues
Mm.
and anxiety. And generally, I can think of an example of a guy I worked with recently, and he had a lot of anxiety that had crept up, and he was having some stomach issues.
Mm.
And and we, obviously we figured out that this was really impacting because he was living in such a high state all the
Mm.
time, sympathetic arousal all the time. His digestive system was just not functioning as well as it could because the resources weren't going there. He was never long enough in a rest and digest state for his body to go, oh yeah, okay, now we can digest food properly. So no wonder he had a lot of gut health issues, because he was, he spent a huge amount of time with the anxiety in this high state of arousal. So something we had to retrain and work on his anxiety levels, getting them down, managing his state. And I actually saw him the other day, and he's doing so much better, which was really, really, really,
Yeah,
really good to hear.
I was wondering if you know how he's been getting on.
Yeah, no, he's doing great. Like I said, we did a lot of work together around sort of bringing his anxiety levels down and getting to work on the core of him. Like I said, the conductor, which is the nervous system, understanding his blueprint of his nervous system, understanding his triggers, and him learning to, interrupt some of the
Mm.
patterns that had been long standing, really.
So what if someone is reading their stress signals completely wrong and actually treating anxiety as motivation, which, yeah,
Yeah,
um,
it's gonna happen.
or like, treating hypervigilance as focus? What do you suggest people do, or how do you help them reframe the whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, that can happen a lot, right? People can misinterpret things, and then they can wake up in the morning and feel tired and wired, I guess, and think, right, I just need to have coffee or I need to hit the gym. They misinterpret the signals that actually there's something else going on in their body. And that's how they could get in this continual cycle of misinterpreting what's going on in your body. And you have to start to it has to start with awareness, but also an understanding of what's happening. I teach people about nervous system and breath work so that you have an understanding of how your nervous system operates, and the states that it might operate from, and the areas that might be impacted. So you learn to understand your own nervous system. Everyone's got their own nervous system blueprint. and that's impacted by your life experiences, dynamics for, throughout your life.
Yeah.
And everyone will have different triggers. So we start to look at the patterns of the triggers. We start to look at, areas where they might be hypervigilant and where they're not, where they feel safe and where they don't. Most people don't understand safety of nervous in your nervous system, and that one, how that might impact you. So it starts with, understanding, getting some knowledge about nervous system, what it is, what it does, how it functions, a deeper understanding of yours so that you know what your triggers are. And then that creates awareness. And then with that awareness comes interruption. So you start noticing. So the awareness comes, you start to notice where I'm triggered, where I'm hypervigilant, where I feel unsafe. And these can be all different environments, in the office environment, difficult conversations, this clothing that someone's wears that you don't
Oh, wow.
like. It might be a trigger from your childhood.
Wow.
And you start to create this awareness and start to notice, so that once you start to understand your system and you start to become aware of your triggers and how it's impacting you, then you can start to interrupt. But it's difficult
That's,
to interrupt if you've no understanding and you've no
yeah.
awareness of it.
That's what's interesting. It's such a complicated concept and thing, an issue. Yet, well, it's certainly not being taught in school. But I'm thinking back to my
No,
business studies. It's not even being taught in business school. So when you become
no.
a business owner or a leader, and you still don't even understand how you operate, that's hard.
And that's a big part of the work that I do. It's like understanding this is why I say
Mm,
state drives strategy. It basically means your internal state drives everything. Your nervous system drives everything. And I didn't know this for myself. I had to learn this for myself, and things have massively changed for me and my business because of it. Because otherwise you're fighting an uphill battle when you're coming from I was hyper vigilant, and that's historical stuff, and I had to understand that and learn to change that. But before, I was really, it's like wearing concrete boots going through a treacle river. It's like I was making it so much harder than it had to be.
If you were listening to this thinking this is exactly where I get stuck, that is not accidental. You have the business strategies, but leaking energy and focus through weak personal health routines. This is the work I do privately with business owners who are ready to build their routines so their business can run without it costing them their health. How do you even begin to help somebody whose nervous system has sort of normalized their high performing state?
Yeah. Again, it's noticing the patterns. You have to start to get really curious about the behaviors that you're doing. Like if you're waking up, wired and tired, and you jump into coffee and going to the gym, is that an avoidance or is it actually what you need? Because for some people, it's an avoidance. It's avoidance to
Okay.
feel. It's avoidance to be with some uncomfortable sensations. Because let's be honest, we have a society where we don't want anything uncomfortable. Everything is about ease and quickness and not feeling uncomfortable feelings. So it's like, oh, I've woke up tired. Is it like me trying to understand that? Or do I just drink coffee and go to the gym and try and wake myself up? It's like starting to get curious about what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. And that is like, that's the starting point
Yeah.
of, and looking for where there is pauses and stillness, and how you feel when you take those pauses and stillness.
Mm.
Because if you look at an animal, say there's a dog fight, a dog will maybe has a scrap, and what does a dog do after it's had a fight, or any animal? They go and they rest and they lie down
Mm.
and they recover, and then they bounce back and they move on. A human being doesn't. We have a battle, we have a difficult conversation, we have pressures, we're under strain. But high performance and leadership and entrepreneurship these days is, we have a battle. What happens? We don't rest, we don't pause, we don't downshift.
We
We
go
just go
from
on to the
battle to
next. We
battle.
go on to the, yeah, we go on to the next thing, but think we've dealt with it. But the loop hasn't been closed. We haven't processed, we haven't moved through. And that stuff resurfaces again and again, usually at 3 a.m. in the morning, when the cortisol levels start to rise. And then suddenly the nervous system's like, well, we haven't closed that difficult conversation we had today. And now my cortisol levels are high. Suddenly it's like it wakes you up and you start going over that thing that you haven't completed. And that's how it can show up.
Wow, that's crazy because I really hate it when that happens. When and yeah, that 3 o'clock thing is like you are absolutely spot on with that because that tends to be that sort of time when I wake and then my brain just kicks into gear without any warning. And it's like, no, this is sleeping time. I don't want to
Yeah.
be thinking at the moment. And it's like, how do I
Yeah.
stop that? And is it where I suppose this is where journaling kind of comes into it. And I must admit that talking about breath work, some weeks ago now, I started. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. I started taking my phone to the bedroom, which I never, ever, ever, ever done before, but only so that
Mm,
I can listen to a meditation session. Now, the downside of it, that I pick it up and I end up
yeah.
down a rabbit hole to do stuff which I shouldn't be doing. But it's really when it's in your hand and literally the moment you bring it to life and you see notifications, then the original intention is
Yeah.
gone. Now it's hard
Dopamine
enough to
hit.
control that during the day, but in the evening it's even worse when you're actually resting and it's kind of like you don't even have that barrier like I've got to do work. But anyway,
Mm,
so the upside is that I listen to a meditation practice and it always starts with deep breathing. And I came to realize that when you're laying down, you can actually breathe so much deeper. It's quite shocking how much more you can breathe in and then, of course, out as well. But that practice itself, just the breathing, because often I don't go
mm.
further than that, I fall asleep,
Good.
has really seriously improved the quality of my sleep. Just that one thing.
It's so important. Like, I run a leadership group, and as part of that leadership group, one of the first things I teach them is about a system called the glymphatic system, which is like it's your brain doing its trash clearing job overnight. But if you don't have good quality and deep sleep, the brain can't do that
Mm,
job. And the impact on that long term is quite shocking in terms of poor memory
mm,
loss, Alzheimer's, dementia. So, but also, the impact of good quality sleep on your nervous system and how you show up as a leader, as a performer, is is incredible. The benefits of good sleep are so important, and so we have to allow our system to do its job overnight, clear out the trash. But if during the day you have not processed, because you say you have a difficult situation with your boss or someone at work, and you don't process that conversation, you move on to the next thing, or you're too busy, or you're in an environment where it's not appropriate that you can complete that loop and work through it. Like I said, what happens is in the body between 2 and 4 a.m. cortisol starts to rise. So if you haven't completed that processing loop and your nervous system, your brain hasn't had the chance to do that, as soon as the cortisol level starts to rise in your body, you wake up at 3 a.m. And then you start, and because there's enough stillness in the body for the nervous system to go, okay, we didn't finish that during the day, let's do it now.
I was just going to ask, it's so bizarre, like when you are in a restful state because you're sleeping, why
Mm.
do we have that cortisol level rise at that really strange hour of the night?
Everybody's system is different, but like once you get through that sort of really deep sleep, then you shift into a
Mm,
different kind of sleep because the body needs to prepare cortisol levels to rise so that you can get out of bed in the morning. We
okay.
need cortisol, we need stress in the
Yeah, but I
body.
need it at like 5 o'clock, not 3 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly. But for everyone, it's different because everyone's got different circadian rhythms. So, I say 2 and 4, it might be 4, but it starts to rise. And then you naturally need that increase, like I said, to, create
Yeah.
sympathetic drive in the body so you can get out of bed in the morning. But if you haven't completed your processing of situations that have gone on before, then it's like you're horizontal, everything's gone quiet, you've not created the stillness during the day to process the conversation or the difficult thing, so it finds its opportunity at 2 3 a.m. when it's all still and you're horizontal to go, okay, now we're going to finish that
Now we're
thing.
gonna do the
um,
processing. It's really interesting that we're talking about breath work and nervous system regulation, but what, in a bit of a strange way, what you've explained to me very well is the reasoning for journaling before bed or at the end
mm,
of the day to
yeah, 100%.
to close those loops. Like, okay, this is what I did
Yeah,
today, and this is how I concluded. Or like, yeah, I suppose even journaling can be learned to make sure that we
yes,
do close those loops rather than just
definitely.
write down what happened.
No,
Um,
it's a processing tool, and
mm,
something I advocate. I journal every day. I have a very kind of set routine, and I journal every day, and I believe in the power of journaling. That's something I never thought I'd say, but I've journaled probably 15 years, I guess.
Wow.
Um, but it does help you close those loops. And then if I need, usually for me, I go off to sleep straight away. But if I don't, then I do my breath work. And breath work then creates that little bit of extra downshift. And I can go off into a beautiful sleep. I used to wake at 3 a.m. all the time. I never wake at 3 a.m. now. I mount sleep at night, I journal at night, and if I need to, I do breath work. And it's a game changer in terms of for my capacity, my ability, for my focus, my decision making, my nervous system, right? My nervous system loves all of that stuff. And that creates the best version of me to show up and go into my day and my business.
Is there a particular technique or a little micro pause that you recommend that people could try literally right now, today, while they are listening, perhaps, so we can do a little mini demonstration here, or you can help me to do it.
It depends what they want to do. If you're at your desk and you're feeling anxious, then it's just a 2 breath in, 1 out. That, and sometimes we get, like, we might read an email, we feel anxious about the email, or we're just off a conversation on the phone and we're feeling quite anxious. The easiest thing is to take 2 breaths in and 1 long exhale.
What you mean, like
just,
just like one on the top of the other?
Okay. Yeah. So you're taking a nice, and then a second top up breath, and then just extend in that exhale. Anytime you extend your exhale, you're signaling to your nervous system that I'm okay, I'm safe, there's no threat, and you create that rise in parasympathetic tone, that rest and digest. So it's just 2 breaths in, and then
1 out.
Nice gentle first part, a little sharper second part, and then a longer exhale. So that's for any moment when you're feeling that real anxiety in the moment. It depends what you're trying to create. If you're trying to create energy, or trying to create downshift. Most people talk about downshift all the time.
Because I think that was my focus as well. That if you find yourself, like a little nervous or something caught your attention and you've noticed your heart racing, or just simply in between 2 tasks, just some little micro action that will disconnect you from one in order to be able to prepare yourself for the next.
Yeah.
But that's...
that one's more for anxiety sort of stuff. But if you're just shifting between something and the next, and, just extend your exhale, breathe in for a count of 4, extend and breathe out for a count of 6, just to get a little bit of extra exhale in. Slows and lowers the heart rate and your respiratory rate. And as soon as you do that, like I said, that creates more parasympathetic tone as you go into the next task. And you want to go into the next task calm and downshifted. Most tasks. And that's
ideally,
yes. To do it. Yeah, if you want to activate yourself, then there's 100 different ways you can do that as well with your breath.
I've got a nice big question for you to finish on. So you've worked with really quite a broad variety of people and organizations, including Olympian CEOs, Netflix, BBC Radio. But now breathwork is kind of everywhere. We can get apps, we can go on retreats, we can be involved in corporate wellness programs. But is the mainstream version of breathwork actually helping people? Or has it been diluted into something that makes people feel good for an hour and otherwise changes nothing?
Yeah, this is something I talk about a lot, and whenever I run sessions, because I run sessions in the community as well, and I always say breathwork's not like a one and done thing. You don't come to an hour session and then your whole world changes. I'm trained in something called conscious connected breathwork, which is high intense breathwork. It's very powerful, very transformative, but it isn't a one and done kind of thing. Breathwork, like most practices and modalities that are going to help you long term and really shift and change your life and your leadership, have to be done to a degree more often than not, is what I say. So you need, and that doesn't, don't get me wrong, I don't sit for 2 hours every day doing breath work. No. Some days I do 10 minutes, some days I do 25 minutes. But I think sometimes the way some of these things are pushed out into the world and breath work, it is sort of shown like that, like, I'll do this and it will change your life. It can change your life, and it's changed my life, but I've been doing it for 5 or 6 years consistently, and that's how it changes your life. And that's how it changes your leadership and your performance, is when you do consistent practices. And
Oh,
like I said, it's a
absolutely.
bit like journaling. Like, you're not going to
Having
go and journal once.
routines.
Yeah,
having ru-
exactly, right?
having
The
routines in
routine.
your personal health, personal life in order to be an effective
Yeah,
leader. But yeah, just sort of
exactly.
reflecting on what you just said, I find that, just this little 1 minute practice at night for the last few months has changed my life already. And it's just
Mm,
literally 1 minute at night
mm.
because I sleep much better. So my rest and recovery loop is
Yeah.
considerably better than it was before.
Yeah, and it only takes a minute. When I first started the practice of coherent breathing, which is the breath work I do every morning, it's my favorite breath work practice. Somebody said do it for 20 minutes either end of the day, and I was like, God, I can't do that. I can't be still for that long. And they said, okay, do 10 minutes. I was terrified of doing 10 minutes. And so I literally had to start at a minute. I had to start
Yeah.
at a minute and see if I could do it for a minute. I mean, now I can sit there for 25 minutes, 30 minutes, even an hour and do this practice. But that's because, I've skilled in it. I've trained myself in it. And my nervous system only has to hear the music now, and I can feel the downshift in my body. I don't even have to start the breathing because it's so used to
Yeah.
the sound that comes with it and associates with it that it immediately goes,
Yeah.
so it's a consistent practice. Yeah, routine.
I was going to say, let me reflect on that, please, because this is so important. There are several things. Start small and do
Yeah,
one thing. And this is
yeah.
that's kind of how I put everything across in my program. Just
Mm,
one micro action a week. And when that
mm,
becomes an integral part of your life, then you
mm.
can either stack
Build
something
on it.
else on top of it or grow it
Yeah,
into, like you
100%.
said, a 1 minute grew probably into 5 minutes and then 10 minutes and
Mm,
then now 20 minutes. And now your body knows the effect. So it's quite happy
mm.
with sitting and doing
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
nothing for
right.
20 twenty
It
five
knows it's
minutes.
safe in that
Yeah.
it hears that
Yeah.
music and it's like, "Oh, we're safe. Oh, okay, it's okay for me to be still now. It's okay for me to rest now." Whereas in the beginning, it was like, "We don't like this." I felt, speed and urgency in my body and restlessness. It didn't know what to do with it. Whereas now it's like, "Oh, yeah, this is good. We like this."
I was going to ask you is to sort of talk about different breathworks.
I can sort of say briefly, like, there's probably 3 or 4 areas and categories of breath work. You can have intensity breath work, which is what I first trained in, and that's you can be used for trauma, for depression, for really moving through some difficult stuck emotions. It can have a really it can have an effect a bit like psychedelics, because conscious connected breathwork has been a lot of research into it now, and the studies show that when you do this form of breathwork, it can give you the effects that you can get from like magic mushrooms, similar
Okay.
effects to magic mushrooms. So
Wow.
you can have psychedelic experiences. You can shift your
But
state of
safely.
consciousness safely in a controlled way because we're manipulating our breath. I'm certified in this kind of breath work. That's where I started my journey into breath work, and it massively helped me release a lot of stuck emotions and grief from my father passing away and my marriage. So that's one category. Then you have categories of activating breath that can help you really energize yourself. Then you have the down regulatory breath that helps you bring more parasympathetic tone. And then the other category is about balancing breath. So there's kind of 4 areas really of breath work, and all each have their own function. I practice all 4 of them at some points, and I teach all of those 4 to my clients as well, so that they understand them, they know when to use them and how it's going to benefit them.
That sounds fascinating. Absolutely
Mm.
fascinating. Sam, thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed
Thank
the
you.
conversation. It's been very insightful. We know a lot more about our nervous system now, and certainly how to use our breath a little better rather than just a survival, an automatic survival.
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
If this episode has shown you where weak health routines are costing you revenue, your next step is simple. Ask yourself this question: is your business draining your energy faster than it grows? If the answer might be yes, I invite you to book a conversation via the link in the show notes. If this conversation made you think, please subscribe, leave a comment, and listen again. If you would like more information on the topic or my guest, all information is in the show notes. Remember, your business will only ever be as healthy as you. Together, let's build routines to bank results.